welcome back to the 27. So here we are, another custom default setup by request from JP Chartrand and Moon Métis 2X, another F1 variant, and yet again another Ferrari, this time the F1 87/88C, or should I say the Formula Classic Gen 2 Mod 3. We're going to be looking at some telemetry to see what makes this car tick and also see if we can find some time. I made a mistake last video saying this would be another Jean Alesi car, shame on me. The 27 car you see here was actually driven by Michele Alboreto during both seasons that it served as the fighter produced by Scuderia Ferrari. The F1 87/88C was the base package for, you guessed it, the 1987 and 1988 Formula One seasons. From a historical perspective, the car had a lackluster career. In 1987, it suffered from extreme reliability problems early on, with no less than 7 double retirements in the 16-race season and a total of 19. It came on strong at the end of the season, which I'm sure gave the Scuderia hope for 1988. However, as always, new technical regulations were put in place that restricted the fuel load from 195 to 150 liters. Ferrari also made a mistake. They did not redesign the already thirsty Tipo 33 V6 turbocharged engine. This gas guzzler forced Gerhard Berger and Michele Alboreto to have to basically back off and fuel save for the entire first half of the season before new engine maps were updated. It was a shame too, because otherwise it could have won the championship. It finished second. However, we're here testing it not because of the historical significance or the missed opportunity of this car per se, but the significance of the era. 1988 was the last year the F1 allowed turbos. So we're here at Spa 1993, which is the actual layout used in both the 1987 and 1988 Formula One seasons. Both races, the Ferraris finished in the garage, but we don't have to worry about that here so much. Setup-wise, the biggest factor for this car is becoming a common theme with the classic and retro F1 cars, and that's aero and differentials. Both have to be on point for the cars to function properly. In that regard, the Gen 2 Mod 3 is not an exception. But really nothing was major wrong with the car. In fact, I thought the differential was very close, so I just made a minor adjustment for taste. It seemed that the car responded well to a lot of little changes here and there. Like 1+1+1 and so on. Camber, toe, pressure, all the usual suspects. A little bit more front end bite, a little bit more rotation. But the main issue with the G2 M3 was the aero balance. I felt it had a tendency to understeer the faster the car was going, which is the telltale characteristic of an imbalanced aero package. So we adjusted the ride height, added some rake. We also added some wing on both ends, but it was the rake and ride height that did the trick. We lost a little bit of rear downforce, but gained it in the front. Spa is a great track to test this. You can really get the power down now in Boulogne and Cabrera, which is vital. We also did some damper work here, as it appeared the car was over-dampened in the front and under-dampened in the rear. The Gen 2 Mod 3 has a two-way damping system, so these dampers control chassis movement and track bumps and curbs, so I found that balancing them made the most sense. As far as driving is concerned, it really is a satisfying car to drive when you get it right. I haven't driven the other models, but the Mod 3 is unique in that it features the turbo. The other models do not. It also has a boost button that I did not use in testing. But nevertheless, the overarching driving characteristic of this car is centered around throttle management with the turbo. It can go no higher than 50% on the setup screen, which is like a baby turbo compared to the Generation 1 models, but still enough to kill you if you aren't careful. You're going to find yourself feeding throttle more carefully, and the setup work when cornering is basically oriented to get you to that point where you can start throttling in as comfortable a fashion as possible. But let's get to the telemetry real quick. I'll show you some of the damping changes in the aero. Alright, so here we are with Racing Sim Tools, and here you can see 2 sessions registered, a default session and a custom session. The lap times, I found a lot of time with the custom package, and it was just a lot of little things, but I wanted to point out a few things in the telemetry that stood out for me. So we're here at the suspension tab under the damper histograms, and this is the default setup here. The damper histograms show each of the 4 corners, each of the 4 wheels, and how the dampers are working through the course of the lap. And so on the left side here is rebound. On the right side its bump. The higher the bars, simply put, the stiffer the damper is. So here you can see with the default package, you have really stiff rebound bias here. That means the rebound aspects of the dampers are much stiffer than the bump. If we compare that with the custom build, I brought that back into reason. But the other thing that I wanted to point out here was on the default package with the rears. Now, out here is a signal marker that the high-speed damping is insufficient. Right here, these little marks right here. And if you see with the custom, that was largely mitigated. Now, like I said before, these are two-way dampers, so they handle both chassis roll and pitch, as well as curbs, bumps, and track bumps, and things like that. So you have to find a balance here. But I'm going to show you another chart that I don't feature very often, and that's called FFT. And we're going to cross-reference. The red is going to be the default package, and the blue is the custom package. Now it's going to look a lot more, it's very similar to you, but this is normal. So we're looking at generalities here mostly, but you can see that the blue means that they're more dampened in the rears, basically. So we're looking at the rears down here at the bottom, the left rear and the right rear. When the peaks are lower, that means it's more dampened. But the thing that I really want to focus in on the rears is out here in these the higher hertz frequency ranges. This range out here, 15 and beyond, is the high speed range. So that's track, bumps, curbs. 15 and below is more the slow damping. So that would be braking and accelerating. But these bumps here mean that there's a lot of activity in the dampers, and you can see if we superimpose the blue, we got rid of a lot of that. Now, what a lot of high-speed damping activity means is that the car is skipping down the track, and in the rears you can see why that would be not optimal, especially under accelerating. So when the car's not adhering to the track, you're not getting as much grip. So that's important. That's an important fix. Okay, next we're going to be moving into the aero. I mentioned that before. This is the downforce tab here, focusing in on the top bar, the axle loads. The blue is the rears and the red is the fronts, and you can see that there's a big gap between the rear wing and the front. I'm sorry, the rear arrow and the front arrow. And then also I wanted to point out here the center of pressure. The second bar is in the 70s, which is actually relatively rearward leaning with regards to center of pressure. And then also the rake here is about 1.5 centimeters, or a little bit more than 1.5 centimeters at points, lower than the front in the high speed zone. So we were going to clean this up. So what we did was we increased the rake quite a bit. Actually, I think the car liked it. The center of pressure came back into about the 65% range. With a rear engine car, that's about right. But at the top bar, if you can see, we increased front downforce and only moderately reduced rear downforce. Now, you would think that reducing downforce is a negative thing all the time. It's not. What you're looking for is a balance. Does the car respond well to turning inputs? Especially in aero spots where high speed or medium speed corners. Is the car turning appropriately? Can you feed the throttle, or is it pushing off the track? So the balance is the most important thing. Finally, we're going to look at the time slip charts. Let's get them all registered here. This is the custom package in red, and then we're going to superimpose the default package in green. And the thing that I wanted to point out on this screen was, besides just the massive amount of time that we gained over the defaults, was I wanted to flag some of these acceleration zones. This is after the TOSA. I cornered faster with the default package, but I was able to rotate the car with the custom build earlier and feed throttle more appropriately. So right here, this is an indication that I dropped throttle. That means the car kicked out. But here I didn't have to drop his throttle as much. Now, obviously, after I caught it, I increased the throttle, but by that time I had lost, it looks like about 0.2. Again, here, not throttling smoothly at Piratella, this more choppy throttle inputs. That means the car's not really getting the traction that I wanted. And here I fed the car, fed the throttle more smoothly and came out of that on top. And then finally, let's look at the Ravazza curves. I love the Ravazza curves for these demonstrations. Cornering was better. The rotation was better. The throttle was a little bit... it was a little bit aggressive on the throttle with the default package, but I had to drop it. And that's because the car got uncomfortable again. So here I was able to, with the red, I was able to increase the throttle and come out about 5 to 6 kph faster out of that corner. So that's the Formula Classic Gen 2 Mod 3, a car that really does have its place here in AMS2. I think if you're a historical F1 fan, you'd miss it if it wasn't here. In any event, I hope you enjoy the build. If you decide to give it a shot, drive it on the defaults first and then this one, and try to notice the differences. If it suits you, make sure to come back and leave a comment. Coming up, we're going to have an Ultima build ready for you on Saturday. That car's fun. In the meantime, thanks for watching and take care.